Hi everybody, welcome to the Kelly Bailey Wellness blog and my YouTube channel. Thank you as always for listening and reading. I really appreciate it. I just wrote a post about exercising too much, which is linked in the description below. If you feel like you've been overtraining or that you're exercising too much, definitely check out the post because it's going to tell you a little bit about what happens with your body when you exercise too much. And it's also going to give you a few tips about how to figure out symptom-wise if you've been exercising too much and how to sort of overcome that if you have been. So you're probably wondering why I'm wearing swim goggles and half of a wetsuit, which this is a triathlon wetsuit. It's because I made special mention a few times in the post that I trained for and competed in triathlons, and how the excessive training actually made me pretty sick. And so I wanted to share my story, but first I am going to take off these goggles because they're driving me crazy. And also this wetsuit is like, if it sounds like I'm out of breath, it's because this wetsuit is so tight that it's cutting off my circulation and my breathing. It's hard to breathe in this thing. So if I sound like I'm out of breath, that's why. I should have taken a video of me trying to get this thing on because that would have been really funny. But anyway, I think it was late 2014 when I was, my daughter had just started going to preschool, and during her preschool, while she was at preschool, I was going to the park to run, and I was really enjoying my runs. I was just having fun. It made me feel really good. I felt like I was doing something really good for myself. And I was only running 3 or 4 times per week. No big mileage. I wasn't trying to get faster. I wasn't trying to run a certain number of miles. There was none of that. I was just doing it because I enjoyed it and it made me feel good. At some point I decided that I wanted something to train for, something to keep me motivated. And so I decided to do a triathlon. You know, I couldn't decide to do like a 10K or a half marathon. I decided that I was going to do the swim, the bike, and the run. So anyway, I began training for a triathlon, and I trained all winter long. For my first triathlon was the following spring. Keep in mind that all through this time, I still had all of the normal stresses that a person has in life. It's not like I quit my job. I still had a job, and this particular job, I was working at my first training job, fitness training job, and I had to get up at 3 in the morning to be at work by 5. And then I would typically get off at around 11 o'clock or noon. And so again, sleep was sort of dysregulated already. I had a job, I had the full-time job, I had a house, I have a husband, I have a kid, a young kid. So all of the normal stresses of normal life. And then I decided to add on this extra training on top of all of that, which again, stress is compounding. So if you have stress in other areas of your life, sometimes adding exercise on top of that stress can actually be detrimental. So anyway, at first all of this went pretty well. I felt really good. My times were increasing for my bike, my run, and my swim. So I was getting faster and I was able to go farther distances. And I even lost a few pounds by the time I had gotten to my first triathlon. And when I undertake one of these types of things, I tend to be an all or nothing person. So I sort of decided at this point that I wanted to take triathlons a little bit more seriously. And I wanted to train a little bit harder. So after my first triathlon, I actually did fairly well. I placed, I would say, in the top 3 in my age group, so not too bad. But again, this sort of motivated me to want to train a little bit harder, which isn't a bad thing. But I also decided for some reason that I wanted to look the part of a triathlete. And if you've ever seen a triathlete or a professional marathoner, I don't like to categorize people, but in general, these pro triathletes and pro marathoners, they have a very specific body type. They tend to be tall, they tend to be thin, they tend to be very wiry. They're the type of people who can eat whatever they want. and never gain an ounce. And that is not my body type. I gain weight very easily, both muscle and fat. I don't lose weight easily. And I am built more like a power lifter. So I excel at lifting heavy weight. I'm very strong. I don't excel as much at the endurance stuff. However, because I had it in my mind that I was going to do triathlons, I was going to do it all the way, and I wanted to look the part of the triathlete. So on top of the exercise that I was going to be adding into my training plan, I was also dropping my calories down. So just to give you an idea, I was exercising 2 to 4 hours a day. So I would get off of work at around 11 or noon, and I would do my first 2-hour workout, and then I would eat, and then I would work out again later in the day for another couple of hours. So 2 to 4 hours every day. And I had knocked my calories back to about 1,500 per day. 1,500 calories per day is not even maintenance level calories for a woman of my size and activity level, even if I wasn't doing any of the training. So again, that was very low for the amount of training that I was doing. At first, this all went really well. I felt great. I had an enormous amount of energy. I didn't even feel overly hungry considering all of the training I was doing. What I didn't realize is that having intense energy and very, very low hunger, and you're doing all of this stuff, that's actually the initial stage of overtraining. So your cortisol, your adrenals are pumping out cortisol. Your cortisol will be exceptionally high. That's a stress hormone, but cortisol gives you energy. And so I would wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and be rip-roaring ready to go. Even though I usually had to go to work, I was ready to get on the treadmill or get on my bike, and I just could have gone for miles. I felt amazing. Again, I didn't realize at the time that that was a sign that that I was actually overdoing it, the fact that my energy was that high. So unfortunately, that phase doesn't last very long, because if your adrenal glands are pumping out cortisol constantly, eventually they burn out and they stop pumping out as much cortisol, and that leads to intense fatigue, which was what happened next. So I became incredibly fatigued, and my muscles, I had this almost unexplainable muscle weakness. When I would go out for a run or a bike ride, it felt like it was miles before my legs would start to work. They felt like total jello, like they didn't want to do anything. It was incredible fatigue, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was asking my doctor, and he couldn't help me. He didn't understand what I was talking about. He thought I was crazy. And of course, general fatigue. I was tired all day long. All I could think about was taking a nap. And but at the same time, I was experiencing insomnia. So I have this incredible fatigue all day long, and I want to sleep. And I lay down at night incredibly exhausted, and then I couldn't sleep. Another hallmark characteristic of overtraining and doing too much exercise. Add into that intense hunger and cravings. So again, at first, my hunger was suppressed, which again, high cortisol tends to suppress hunger. So the weight just melted off of me at that point. And, you know, I was able to lose weight, and I got down to my leanest body ever, which I think I was maybe 16 or 17% body fat, which is really low for a woman. But I started having these intense, crazy hunger and cravings, which makes sense because I was eating so little and training so much. But again, my hormones were all out of whack. And so I was really struggling to keep it under control, especially on weekends when I felt like I wanted to relax a little bit. I would totally lose control. It was nothing for me to eat an entire package of Oreos. And this would be after I had already eaten like lunch or dinner. And I would still want to eat more. So I would be eating all of this food, and I felt like I was totally out of control. So I'm having hunger, cravings, and I'm binging more and more frequently, and I just couldn't figure out. And again, I felt really bad about it because I wanted to look like a triathlete. I was trying to lose weight, but I can't control my eating at this point. I was moody. So my moods completely changed. I was irritated all the time with my husband and my kid. And, you know, when we talk about like sex drive, there was none. None of that was happening. And again, you would think that when you get down to your lowest body fat percentage, and I did feel like I looked really good, but I didn't feel sexy. I had no sex drive whatsoever. So again, there was none of that happening. You would think that, you know, you get down to where you feel like you look your best, and you would think that, you know, all of, you know, the sexiness would be there, and it's not at all. So there was none of that happening. My sex drive was totally gone. Bloating. And again, at the time, I'm not putting together, I'm not connecting all of these different dots. So to me, the bloating was like, oh my gosh, what's going on with me, you know? So I'm this little tiny thin person all of a sudden with 16% body fat, and I have this belly that won't go away. And it didn't matter what I ate. Didn't matter if I ate healthy food or unhealthy food. I had a belly. I was bloated all the time. And so I'm popping probiotics like you know, like they're candy. And it worked sometimes, and it did help a little bit, but it wasn't addressing the underlying issue, which was I was over exercising. I'm exercising too much, and over exercising and causing yourself excessive amounts of stress. And that could be from lifestyle factors, or it can be from over exercising, but that actually causes an imbalance in your gut bacteria. So the bad gut bacteria will get out of control, and the good ones start to die off. And again, that can create those GI issues. So if you're having gastrointestinal issues and you feel like this is out of the ordinary and I shouldn't be you know, I'm a healthy person, I'm exercising, I shouldn't have all these issues, you know, again, that's just another sign that you're causing yourself too much stress. So lots of bloating, which is always fun. Dizziness and fainting spells, another hallmark characteristic of doing too much exercise. So when I would be sitting down and I would go to standing too fast, I would feel like I was going to faint. Similarly, if I was on my bike and doing a workout where I was maybe trying to hit higher intensities, or on a run trying to hit higher intensities, I would feel like I was going to faint. And that should have been a big red flag to me. And honestly, I didn't really ever think much about it at the time. Also because related to that, I had very low blood pressure. And training, so cardiovascular workouts can lower your blood pressure, which for most people is a great thing. But if you overdo exercise, it can lower your blood pressure too much. Same thing with resting heart rate. My resting heart rate was in the low 40s. It's great to have a lower resting heart rate, but again, you can't have too much of a good thing. And having a heart rate that low is too low. So most people have a normal heart rate is somewhere between 60 and 80 beats per minute. And mine was in the low 40s. And that's, you know, that's nothing to brag about. I used to brag about that, saying, see how low I'm so healthy, see how low my resting heart rate is. And it really wasn't healthy, especially when you look at the big picture of, you know, I was having these dizzy and fainting spells, and I had super low blood pressure. My menstrual cycle stopped completely. I was one of these women who had a normal menstrual cycle. I was on the dot every 28 to 30 days. I would have my period, and it totally stopped. And I, of course, went to my doctor several times and voiced my concerns about this, saying, is this normal? And he would tell me that, yes, this is normal for an athlete to experience what he calls cessation of menses, is what he said. And it never felt normal to me. I always wondered, you know, is it really normal? And now, with the knowledge that I have, I realize from a biological perspective, all animals on this planet have two jobs. The first is to survive, and the second is to reproduce. So if you are doing things that actually cause you to become infertile, then I think that that's a stress that you shouldn't be placing on your body. So it is not normal to cause yourself to become infertile. So if you are exercising so much that your period has gone away and that you are not having a menstrual cycle, or your menstrual cycle has become very dysregulated, and or it's very like, you know, happening this month and not the next, that's not normal. And you need to reevaluate your exercise in that case. The next two things were the kickers for me. These were the things where I finally sat back and thought, wow, what am I doing? And the first was I went down to Ohio State University and I had a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan, they put you in this crazy big scanner, and it looks at body fat percentage, and it also measures bone density. And my body fat percentage was very low, which was not surprising. But what was really, really surprising and what really woke me up was the fact that my bone density was really low. And even the tech who was running the DEXA scan, she was like, wow. She's like, you're in your 30s and you are borderline osteoporosis. And I mean, that just shocked me. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I'm doing all this exercise. I'm so healthy. That was my thought. I'm so healthy. How am I almost in osteoporosis? So again, that was a big wake-up call for me. And then the second one was I got shingles. And so for anybody who is familiar with shingles, it is caused by the chickenpox virus that goes dormant inside your body. So generally, old people or people with suppressed immune systems get shingles. And I didn't know what it was when I got it. All I know was that I had this god-awful rash that was the most painful thing that I've ever been through. It was incredibly painful. And I went to the doctor, and of course I was terrified because I'm like, what is going on with my body? At this point, I'm starting to connect the dots. And I'm like, what is going on? I feel like I'm falling apart. I have this horrible rash. What is it? And he said, you have shingles. And I said, isn't that the old people's disease or sickness? And he said, yeah. He said, usually people over the age of 50 or 60 would get shingles. He said, but people with suppressed immune systems can also get shingles. And then he said, or he asked, have you been training or doing a lot of exercise? And I said, as a matter of fact, I have been training for triathlons for almost 2 years. And he said, you are suppressing your immune system. And I was like, wow, bingo. That was my wake-up call. I competed in my final triathlon that year, and I decided to quit doing triathlons. And that was really hard for me because at that point I had associated my exercise with staying thin. I had associated exercise with allowing myself to eat. And when you associate exercise with those two things, it can be really hard to stop exercising because you have this incredible fear that you're going to get fat. So, and when I stopped, I did gain weight, but I needed to. So I needed to gain weight. I needed to gain weight to re-regulate my menstrual cycle. I needed to gain weight to feel better. 16 or 17% body fat is too low for a woman. And so I needed to gain weight to become healthy again. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. But I finally did, and it took 3 years for me to recover from the overtraining that I did. So if you are in a state where you have been training for a long time and you're feeling like this and you have all of these symptoms, please understand that it can take a really long time for your body to bounce back. It took me 3 years. It took 2 years to have a single menstrual cycle. And then it took another year for me to get back on a normal cycle where I'm every 28 to 30 days again. And you would never think that a woman could be excited about having a menstrual cycle, but every month that I have my period, I am thankful and excited. And the first one I had after 2 years of not having one, I called my husband. I was like, I just had a period. I'm so excited. And again, by this point, I'm feeling more normal again. My energy levels had come back up. My digestive issues were going away. My weight had stabilized. My eating behaviors had stabilized. So again, all of the dots to me were finally connected, and I realized that I was actually hurting my body. I felt like I was being healthy. I was super fit, but I was not healthy at all. So there's a big difference between health and fitness. And it took my body all of 3 years. And even now, I still struggle with the energy to do workouts. So I have to be really, really careful about my intensities, about how long I exercise, about how often I exercise. And I don't know, to be honest, if my body will ever be the same as it was before I overtrained. So my body is still recovering even 3 years later. So do keep in mind that whether, wherever you are, if you've been overtraining or over-exercising, it can take some time for your body to come back from that. So if you're watching this and if you are experiencing some of these symptoms, it's really important that you evaluate, how much you've been doing. You need to evaluate your other life stressors. If you're working a very stressful job, if you're not getting enough sleep, adding exercise on top of that is actually probably making your situation worse. So you need to evaluate, why am I doing all of this exercise? Am I doing it because it makes me feel good? Am I doing it so I can allow myself to eat? Am I doing it to try and lose weight? Or am I doing it for, what purpose does doing all of the exercise have for you? So I hope that this very long-winded video was helpful for you. If you're in that spot, I've been there, so I totally understand. If you have questions for me or if you want to talk about this topic, I'd be more than happy to do that. So you can reach me in the comments below. You can post in the comments on my blog. You can find me on Facebook. I hope that this was helpful for you, but at this point, I really need to end this video so that I can get out of this suit because I can barely breathe. By the way, if anybody is planning to do triathlons and you need a triathlon wetsuit, I have a very gently used one right here, and it's a split piece, so it's got a top and a bottom, and I can tell you right now that my ass is never gonna fit into these bottoms again. And I'm never going to try to get it to again. So if anybody needs a very gently used wetsuit, I have one for you. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you next time on the blog or on the YouTube channel. Thanks, guys. Bye.